Chapter 2. John Morrison watched the live feed of the old man thrashing about and screaming. While there was no audio, he needed little aid to understand what Jack Newsom was saying. Morrison moved from behind his desk and exited his office on the 99th floor. He motioned for the two guards standing watch outside to join him as they made for the closest elevator. With the press of a button, they dropped to the 46th floor. Morrison waited a long time for this moment. Without a doubt, he knew Jack Newsom was the man who had attempted his assassination all those years ago. The old soldier had failed miserably, and cost many of his troops their lives while doing it. Now, he had tried again, and had failed before he even started. The inertia of the elevator stopping on the designated floor let him know it was time to attend to business. Morrison left his men out front of the door and entered the white room. "The man himself," Jack spat, his voice loudly trying to overpower the pain and exhaustion in his voice. Morrison said nothing, but reached for a white ottoman that sat near one of the counters. He sat himself on it next to Jack Newsom and stared at his nemesis with his dark blue eyes. The broken man looked back at him with his own blue eyes. Neither man said anything for several moments. Morrison tried to stare him down, but the old man never glanced away. In that moment, Jack thought he was looking into a mirror. The repercussions of all his actions were now just opposite of him. But the old man did not flinch. He knew that for all Morrison's power, for all the deaths he had caused, for all the manipulations Jack had emulated from him, they were equals. John Morrison was just a man. "It's amusing to me that in your frail age you would reattempt this stupidity, Captain," Morrison mocked. "Human nature never fails to reveal the worst in us. Take you, for example. So devoted to ending me, to being the hero. So blinded that you forsook a life of luxury under my rule. And now, here in the end, all you have earned is a slow death." "Shit, Maury. All you're missing is the perfume, and you'd be just like my ex-wife," Jack replied with a bloody grin. "You gonna kill me? Get it over with? Or make me fall asleep with your self-indulgent speeches?" To Morrison's credit, his anger did not show easily across his face. Instead, he returned Jack's grin and reached for the pistol attached to his hip. He fired a round into the old man's foot, which made Newsom scream out in pain. Morrison waited for the man to slow his breathing before he spoke again. "I don't care if this takes hours or days, you maggot fuck piece of gutter trash. You will tell me where the rest of your team is and what their plans are, or I will ensure you live the rest of your days feeling the pain of Prometheus. Do you understand that?" Jack groaned as he lifted his head. "Hate to say it, Maury, but I've only got one liver." Morrison grinned again as he lifted his pistol and shot Jack in his other foot before leaving the room. As he slammed the door behind him, he turned to his guards. "Get the doctor back in there to fix him up. One of you will always remain at this door. I'll be back tomorrow morning." Alex was stirred from his sleep by Layla, who had relinquished control of the chopper back to Tommy. She was sitting on top of him and had fallen asleep there too. "You always wake up earlier than me," Alex said, rising to his feet. "Are we here, Tommy?" "Just about, boss. You want me to radio Alonso?" the pilot asked. "Yeah," Alex replied. "He'll appreciate that more than a random chopper hitting his roof. Hope Jack had a plan to hide this damn thing until we need it again." "Just as long as it doesn't involve hiding it under a tarp," Tommy replied sarcastically as he punched up some numbers on the radio. To Alex, it was surreal coming home. Compared to London or Tianjin, New Purgatory looked like a dreamland. All the inner city buildings were lit up. There was no visible burnt-out wreckage. The only similarity was in the emptiness of the streets. He knew where the rich hid, scattered amongst their glass towers with their passes that gained them entrance to luxuries the infirm could only dream about or hear in legends. They had become afraid of anyone lower in status than they were. Morrison's lies told of how those on the street were all murderous criminals. No doubt they bought into every lie, more so now that there were prisoners hiding out through the city, free to roam and kill Morrison's soldiers as they had back at Liberty State Park. Yeah. Uh-huh. No. All right, we'll swing her around back, Tommy said before he cocked his head halfway back towards Alex. We got the okay. The guy said it'll be perfectly safe in the shadow of the club. All right, bring us in the long way, Alex replied. Come on, Alex, I ain't stupid. Well, that and I didn't plan on getting shot down after all the bullshit we've been through this past month, the pilot said. Alex didn't know how December had come so quickly. Time had disintegrated while they traveled from country to country. Hell choppers were quick machines, but nowhere near as fast as the jets of the pre-war days. Between that and the downtime in each country, the minutes, hours, and days added up quickly. December. Alex had plans for this month. This was the beginning of the systematic destruction of Morrison's empire. From the lowest of his soldiers, to his infrastructure, to basic human services. Alex and his team would let Morrison suffer, as all the man had built collapsed around him. And then, when he had no other option but to hide in his tower, they would take that from him too. December would be the end of John Morrison. As promised, Alonso greeted the team at the back entrance. Though the bar owner had never met Alex before, he knew plenty about him from Jack. The one-armed man was quick to make clear that everything was on his tab, even when he found out the news that the old man had given himself up. Damn shame. Doesn't surprise me, though. After a while, the fight gets taken out of everyone, Alonso said. Nayala, still stricken by the old man's loss, was quick to disagree. No one just gets taken to die. He sacrificed himself, she replied. Alonso was not the arguing type. Fair enough, he replied, leading them up to their large plush quarters. It was as Alex remembered it in their brief time before leaving for London. The large oak table, the rooms that spanned two of the walls, and all the workbenches and armor lockers. Before Alonso left to return to his managerial duties, he addressed the entire team. First thing you lot might want to do is check your rooms. Old man arranged for some stuff to be left here for all of you. Hope I see some of you downstairs. Crowd has been picking up lately. With that, the bearded man vanished behind the door. Ezra made his way over to Alex. I doubt any of these rooms bear my name, the bounty hunter said. Alex led him over to Elias's room, and then unsheathed his parang. He could feel 10 sets of eyes fall on him, wondering what he planned to do next. Ezra stayed calm. Alex knew he'd get no response from the lifelong IDF soldier. He shoved the parang under Eli's nameplate, and then pried it off, letting it crash to the ground, and then turned around and placed the blade back in its sheath. It's yours now. Find anything that would have belonged to my friend, then you let me know. Got it? Alex ordered. The bounty hunter nodded and moved past him and inside, closing the door behind him. Alex wanted Ezra to know that he would never take one eye off him, as long as he was around. They had fought, and like the rest of his team, he was unnerved by Ezra's presence. Not knowing his allegiance makes you uneasy. He's an outsider until he can prove otherwise. Everyone else made their way into their respective rooms, eager for sleep, a shower, or to see if the old man had left them anything. Alex decided he was in no rush for any of these. Layla moved near him and whispered in his ear. So who gets the first shower? After you, Alex replied, plopping down at the head of the oak table and setting his journal down in front of him. I'll catch up in a bit. She gave him a funny look, but Alex didn't return it. Instead, he hid inside his journal, beginning to read his old notes. Layla shrugged and made for his room. There was a crate sitting on the bed of her and Alex's room, the lid already cracked open and easy to remove. She couldn't imagine what else the old man would give her. He had already replaced her weapon in London. What more could he dig up that they didn't already have? As she looked down, she could make out the familiar sight of ammo boxes laying at the bottom, labeled SMG and the other rifle. There was another box that lay above the two, though this one was made of cardboard. Layla forced it open, hearing the snap of packaging tape inside. When she poured the contents out onto the bed, Her heart began to race. The first item was a photo in a dual picture frame. On the left was a panned-out shot of London in its prime, long before the war. And the second was a photo of Layla with her parents. She turned it around and found a note sticking out of the felt on the back. "Found it with your things. Sorry I stole it from you, kid. I wanted to give you something you'd remember. Glad you took a chance and didn't shoot me when we first met. Jack." Layla fought back the tears and placed the framed photo on her nightstand. In that moment, she was unsure whether she felt upset that she had forgotten about the photo or that Jack had taken it. A few tears rolled down her cheeks, and she realized that didn't matter. It was the old man's gesture that counted. Layla went back to looking through the box and found what she assumed to be a voice recorder. It also bore a note that read, "Alex," and nothing more. She set it off to the side for him to find later. There was still something else waiting for her at the bottom of the cardboard box. It looked like a necklace from afar, but when she reached into the package and then held it to the light, she realized what it was. Dog tags, but not like the ones her father wore. Janet saw that these were not the tags of any military force she had ever known. As she held the chain above her head to get a closer view of them, on one side they were engraved with an iron cross, the Crusader cross. Janet set the tags aside and overlooked Jack's other gifts to her. Rifle ammunition, some old blueprints for weapon schematics her father never finished, and an unopened letter addressed to her from her father. "Jan, if you're reading this, then I didn't make it back. We failed. And the future you have lived in is a result of our inability to stop the next threat to the world. John Morrison is an evil man. I regret every day I worked under him before Jack found us again. I created weapons that have killed more people, innocent or otherwise, than I ever had the chance to in my military career. When I look at you, when I look at myself in the mirror, I cannot abide by that. I rejoined Jack to set that mistake right, or die trying. I don't expect you to live up to my sacrifice, to make up for my failures. But I know you, Jan. I know you won't rest until this has been made right in your eyes. I love you, and I wish things could be different. Understand that I had to walk this road. My conscience demanded it. I love you, Jan. Dad." Janet set the letter down and reached into her shirt for the tag that belonged to her father. For a moment, she looked down at them, at the old scar marks, at the worn letters that spelled out Lieutenant Eric N. Trishella. More than anything during her travels along the coast, she wanted to find this. Something that would connect her to her father one last time. But the old man had kept it from her. His hate and guilt ran so deep for Morrison that he pushed her in the opposite direction of what her father had wanted. Janet wanted to be angry, but she could only feel pity for her father, for Jack. She reached down and pulled her tag off the chain and attached it to her father's. Her resolve was still strong, knowing she would get a chance to set her father's legacy right. Tyler dropped his tags over the 5-layer squares of C4 that the old man had somehow found during his time in New Purgatory. Tyler was certain that most of it was stolen, but that didn't bother him slightly. There was also a large bottle of whiskey with a card attached to it. "McGrath, show Morrison why he should be more careful with his requisition department. And while you're at it, take a closer look at the second tag. Jack." Tyler reached back over to the C4 and looked at the dog tags. There were 2 on his chain. The first read a name he was unfamiliar with, while the second one simply read Van. The bomber sat back a moment and stared at the tag. The old man had never known his brother, but still honored him in this small way. That day, only a month and change ago, still haunted his dreams at night. Morrison had given Tyler all the reason he needed to fight and kill and die for a cause he had never been sure about up until that day. He wondered if this was how his family had felt about the English all those years ago. and then decided that past no longer mattered. He would make his own history with the Crusaders. He would settle the blood debt that had ruined him. Otto's box was large, so large that he assumed that whoever had brought it in would have needed a dolly. With his bare hands, he cracked it open and spread a wide smile across his face. "You sure know how to give gifts, Jackie boy," the convict said to himself. As Otto went to grab the weapon, a gleam of a chain wrapped around a note caught his eyes. He grabbed that first, opening the letter. "If I'd never known you, I would have been a lesser person for it. You surprised me when we first met. And as we go through these final days together, you surprise me even more. Of the few friends I've made, you may be the one most like me in your brutal honesty, your philosophy, and your wisdom. It is because of your advice that I've made the decision that puts me where I am now. I think now I understand what Eric explained to you, what you and Dellin tried to make me learn. I'm afraid I've learned that lesson all too well. The final push rests on the shoulders of men and women I've come to trust, and I hope this last sacrifice proves that they can trust me, like you can trust me. Learn to do well. Seek judgment. Relieve the oppressed. Judge for the fatherless. Defend the widow. Captain Newsom." The convict set aside the letter and donned his tags. Jack had never been a man of so many words. He gave orders, he debated, and he planned. It had always been Otto's hope that behind the old man's dire eyes, there was still a part of him that was human. A part that wanted nothing to do with war or revenge. The convict scanned through the letter once more, knowing that his old friend had still existed beyond all that hatred, that he had sacrificed more than the rest of this new team could imagine. Neala noticed an electronic tablet lying on her bed, dog tags draped across it. At first, she wanted nothing to do with it. It was like Jack to leave her a goodbye after he had already cut her off, if only to pull her back in. As Neala laid on her bed, she pushed the tags off to the side and stared at the device for a few moments. Curiosity would eventually get the better of her, and while she didn't want the old man to win, she was curious at what he might say, what fucked up reasoning he might have. As she pressed play, Jack's face showed with the background of a hell chopper behind him. "Naya, I'll keep this short. What I did to you was wrong. I've done a lot of wrong over the years. When the military dissolved and left me to my own devices, I knew I had to find another purpose, but not one for a man who would be a tyrant. I won't insult you by apologizing for the lies, the manipulations, and the rejection. If I had tried to let you in, to let you see all the shit the way I do, I know you would have left me a long time ago. I needed you to believe in me. I needed you to validate my war, and I needed you to need me. There's a part of me that does love you, but not in the way that Brandon does. He loves you more than I ever could. I can see it when he looks at you. He and I both share a fire, but that similarity ends when it comes to what we want. I want an end to a war I have no intention of coming home from. He wants glory and the girl. I'm in no position to ask for any more favors from you, but I hope you'll consider this one. Do what makes you happy when this is over. Forget about the old man who needed others to fight his battles for him, and live your life free of my shackles. Jack." The recording ended with static, and Neala trying to fight back her tears. It was the confirmation of her worst fears. She had betrayed her life and career for a man that only had his foot halfway in the door for her. He had needed her skill like he did all those years before the fire that ended their old lives. And that, while not comforting to her pain, was what she needed to keep going. She would do as he asked, and she would forget. Neala reached for her tags with a renewed purpose, and read the name imprinted across it. A clean silenced pistol was set on McHale's nightstand. and while he still felt nothing about the item's presence, he could understand gratitude. The gesture made him smile to himself. He studied the pistol the old man had supplied him with. It was of American make and held more rounds than his. Also, unlike his own, was the capability to remove the silencer. He lifted the pistol and twirled it around, then stopped when it was aimed at himself. He looked at the end tip, where future bullets would escape. It was colored gold, just like his eyes. Mikhail went to set it back down when he saw a data disk off to the corner of the table. The shadow lifted the disk and studied it, then made way for the computer that was across the room from his bed. Mikhail inserted the disk in the tray and waited for the computer to power on. The Russian was curious as to what could be on the disk, for he knew there was little the old man could find that he needed. When the computer was on, an image of the old man popped up. Kozlov, I'm sure you're wondering how it is an ex-Marine from New Purgatory came to know and understand your existence. I hate to have to be the one to explain this to you, but you've been on my radar for years. Shouldn't surprise you that the other countries have been looking into your homeland, those being Berlin, Sydney, and New Purgatory. Through a mix of reconnaissance by the Rangers both in and out of your country and private conversations between Tsar Smokolov and John Morrison, I was able to find out what started the war that ended the world. I find it interesting that you decided to join us and that you thought I might not find out. What you did is in the past, and somehow Alex seems to trust you. I have no reason to ruin that trust. But Kozlov, you owe a debt to this world larger than you could ever hope to pay back in this life. I'm leaving you with something else on this disc, something you might find important. Consider it a gift for your service. Mikhail breathed in a deep sigh. He was not sure what Newsom's last gift would be, but before he went to open the file, the gleam of a chain caught his eye. It was a dog tag hanging from the side of the computer tower. Mikhail reached for this first. Tommy didn't expect to see the keys to his BMW again, let alone 3 more similar car keys hanging off the same chain. There was a small note under it that had his name labeled on it. Tommy, didn't scratch the paint nor touched it under the hood. In case you do, there's a few more waiting in Alonso's lockup. All designed for ground transport. Have fun. His payment had finally come through after all the months of being a berated servant. Tommy almost thought the old man wouldn't come through for him now that he was gone. But here was his reward. Like always, the old man had been 2 steps ahead. About damn time, the driver said to himself, as he held up all the keys on one finger. While whirling them around, he noticed a chain with an emblem that dangled around the key ring. He put it in the palm of his hand and tried to read the tiny etching on the symbol attached to it. Brandon noticed his tag immediately and placed it around his neck. The old man had also left him ammo box after ammo box of 50 caliber rounds. Where the old man managed to find them was the sniper's best guess, but Brandon just felt fortunate to be well stocked. There was a letter with his name on it, and though he considered leaving it for later, his interest got the better of his judgment. What can I put down here, kid? I'm not even sure as I write this to you. Seeing you again isn't what I expected. I wanted you to hate me. Maybe you do. I felt guilty for a long time, for everything I did, for the blame I cast on you, and for the anger that I took out on you. I hope you know that I only did what I did to see you at your best. What happened 10 years ago wasn't your fault. That was my mistake, and my mistake alone. That's why I'm where I am now. When I started drinking, it fucked up my ability to make proper decisions about our mission. It deluded me into thinking we were all invincible. And now I bear the blame for that. There is one last thing I need from you, kid, in exchange for the tags and the ammo. Try to forget about me, even if that damage is already done. This new world you're fighting for won't be because of me. but because of the men and women you're with now. Jack. Fresh syringes, medicine that was within the expiration date, bandages with splints, even packs of fluid with drips. The chain was a nice touch by his old friend, but what surprised Dellen was the unopened bottle of Jameson's 1780. It reminded Dellen that Jack had been a different person once, his best friend, and a man that always made good on favors. There was a note attached. Remember where we first met, Dell? That little bar in London you always went to? I walked in and thought, what a shithole. I saw you at the bar, an empty shot glass on the table and a stout in hand. It was the middle of the day. It was just you, me, and the bartender. I sat next to you and ordered a lager, and all you could do was laugh. I was sizing you up for the next half hour, and you went off on us Yanks. We fought back and forth until the bartender told us to take it outside. That was our first fist fight. And after we had worn each other out, I told you I was with the UN and recruiting you. And you looked at me like I was nuts until I showed you the badge. That was the first of many fights we had. Some good, and one that ended our friendship. I can't apologize for what I did, my old friend. You don't deserve me spinning another bullshit lie. What I will say is I miss the days we went back and forth, where we made an actual difference in the world. I hope that you can make the difference we promised we would make in 2026. I hope our crusade can be added to the history books. Have a drink for me. Captain Newsom. Dellen reached for the bottle and set it on the shelf. He knew at that moment he'd never see his old friend again. Jack Newsom died when he let himself be taken by the soldiers in Jerusalem. The doctor had hoped that this new team was just smoke, that he wouldn't have to see Jack again or try to start another fight that would mean so much loss. But it was all real, and the doctor found himself attached, bought in. That was the power of Jack Newsom. It's why Dellen knew Jack's sacrifice was real. The same sacrifice that the old man had been unable to make 10 years before. You've more than paid your price, my friend, Dellen said to himself as he opened the bottle and took a small swig. Cheers to you, Jack. I'll see them through. Talia was surprised to see her mother's personal history lying in a file before her, next to cross tags of her own. The files were the only thing she had wanted, and she was glad the old man had fulfilled his promise. She thought Jack might have known they would do to her mother more justice than any explanation, or perhaps there were truths he wasn't willing to explain. Regardless, she was pleased and began poring over the information. That was until she opened the first page and found 2 tags on a chain waiting for her, just over the documents. Ezra felt as if he had walked into another man's life. The room didn't carry any of the fallen man's paraphernalia, but it was still eerie. He was still intimidated by the way Alex had looked at him after the man had pried his friend's name off the door like he was kicking over a tombstone. The bounty hunter didn't want to upset his new leader any more than he already had. So he dug through the crate that was no doubt meant for Elias. There was an economy-sized package of rolling paper, a bag of Ghana, an old book on Eastern and Western philosophies, and finally, a pair of dog tags with the name Elias. As he stared down at the tags, he began to regret the side he had chosen. These people were brothers and sisters who were fighting for more than money or change. They were fighting for each other, and that was something the bounty hunter had not seen since his days in the IDF. Ezra refilled Elias's crate and set it by the door, all the while wondering if there was another path he could walk. The man that started this crusade has become different than the man I am now, but as I look out at the city I call home, it has all remained the same. The same empty streets, the same glass towers, the same people fighting for crumbs of food and simple freedoms denied to them every day. Coming home has reminded me why I started this fight. Every injustice I've ever seen in this place, this hell, this purgatory, needs to have an answer. That answer can only come in one way: the end of a gun, putting down the man responsible. Elias used to tell me that violence rarely solves problems, and in a way, he was right. The war that ended most of the known world only gave rise to men like John Morrison. But Elias was wrong about my intentions. This fight isn't about solving the problem. This fight is about ending the threat to everyone's lives when they walk down the street. I once read that a revolution is a struggle to the death between the future and the past. John Morrison is that past, and I hope those I fight with are the future to this place. I want an end to this. I want an end to the killing and dying. And most of all, I want to be alone. Starting a fight is easy, but living with the repercussions, well, there's only so much a man can take. When I think about the old man, I wonder if that's what made him give up. If the fight had finally been taken out of him. I can't let myself end up like that. That's why I have no intention of making it through Morrison's tower. I will fight, and I will kill, until I can be sure that man is dead. If not, then this was all for nothing, and that I cannot abide. My best friend asked me what I might do if I did make it through. I might have promised Layla that I would stop fighting, but that can never be true. There are others who need help on their own crusades. They are all ready to give so much to me. If I live, it will be my turn to give to them. No sooner had Alex put his pen down than his team exited and surrounded by taking their places at the table. Each set something down in front of themselves. It wasn't until he felt Layla's hands put something around his neck that he realized what it was. He had seen the emblem used in the old Crusades. They were not all the same. Some were vast and complicated in the books he had read. This one was the Jerusalem cross. He saw that it was engraved on the outside and inside. Before he read it, he looked out at the rest of the members of his team. Ezra unhooked the one he had from its chain and slid it over to Alex. He picked it up and read it, and then slid it over to Janet, who did the same before hooking it to her own chain. Alex cast his gaze over at Talia, his silent way of asking what her own tag said. Faith. Talia looked towards Dellen. Bones. Dellen looked to Brandon. Fox. Brandon looked to Tommy. Grease. Tommy looked to Mikhail. Shadow. Mikhail looked to Neala. Siren. Neala looked to Otto. Convict. Otto looked to Tyler. Ruin. Tyler looked to Janet. Defiant. Janet looked to Layla. Exile. Layla looked down at Alex. Sentinel. Alex looked out at them all. Seems Jack had one final gift for us all, he said, holding up his tags. He left you some items for your friend. I left them in his room, Ezra replied. Alex gave the bounty hunter a nod and turned back to the rest of his team. Everyone get settled in and catch up on rest. The real work starts tomorrow. Morrison had left his handgun in the office today and instead opted for 2 sets of brass knuckles. Jack was already bloodied by his attacks, but was still flashing gritty smiles between punches, showing the shine of blood on his teeth. You gonna ask me any questions yet, kid? Jack said defiantly. Morrison threw another punch that caught Jack in the chest. Oh, the last thing you deserve is a normal interrogation, Newsome. You, of all people, should realize that. I am a bit of a bastard, aren't I? He knew Morrison wasn't here to ask him any questions. It was what the old man used to do, soften up his prisoners before they would spill everything. That's why he was laughing. There was nothing John Morrison could do to him that hadn't been done before. Or so he thought. Morrison forced Jack to open his mouth. The man took off the bloody knuckles from his left hand and forced it in the middle of Jack's teeth, and then threw a hard right hook to the old man's chin. The veteran lost consciousness instantly, and blood began to spill from his mouth. No, Morrison would not be asking any questions today, and perhaps not tomorrow either. He wanted Jack to know pain, the same pain he felt when his father's birthday passed, the same pain he felt when he visited his son's tombstone. John Morrison exited the room and gave the doctor a nod. There was another man waiting in the room, his Diamond Pass card hanging on his neck for the world to see. Morrison knew him as Gaddis Pelly, his intelligence officer, with his Marine contingent. "What is it, Gaddis?" Morrison asked. "Are you all right, sir?" the shorter man asked, his green eyes curious. "You're sweating through your suit." "Just getting my morning exercise in. Do you have something to report?" "We saw your son's hell-chopper appear above the city yesterday. They tried to take a back route to conceal their entrance, but we caught them on their entry." John Morrison let a smile slide across his face. "Interesting. Do you know where they landed?" "No, sir," Gaddis said, shifting uncomfortably. "We only know they're nowhere in the immediate area. If I had to put money on it, I'd assume they were in the outer regions." Morrison slid his other bloody brass knuckle off his hand and placed it in Gaddis's suit pocket near his handkerchief. "I want more than an assumption, Gaddis. Find them. Today." "Yes, sir," the man replied, racing back to his station. John's smile faded as he opened the door to his torture room and yelled towards the doctor. "How long?" "An hour, maybe 2, sir," the doctor yelled back. "Ugh," he groaned to himself. "I'm going for breakfast. Send someone when he's ready for me again." As Morrison made towards the elevator, he thought of the eggs Benedict he would have the leggy chef 4 floors down make him, and how wonderful that would taste after such a strenuous beating. He took more enjoyment in knowing Jack Newsom would only have bloodied teeth for his morning meal. Alex elected to not sleep on the night of the return. He couldn't. His head had been filled with ominous thoughts about the next few weeks, how his team would work together, and the old man. Drinking in the bar had been an effective way to clear his mind, but now he was paying for it. When he woke up, he was on the floor of his room, a blanket crudely draped over his body. To his surprise, Alex still woke up before the rest of the team. He spent a half hour attempting to roll a Ghana cigarette, failing 3 or 4 times before getting one that resembled a crushed piece of notepaper rather than something that came in an old cigarette pack. As he puffed away, he opened a map of the city. It was one of the current versions Morrison had commissioned after Blood Boil. Not for the public, of course, but for his army. Alex knew that getting a copy would have been hell, but it was just another problem Jack had handled with ease. Jack. Alex wondered how he could ever have distrusted the old man. Eli had been wary of him from the start, and that made Alex do the same. Of course, on more than one occasion, the old man continued to prove himself. The old bastard even gave up drinking, just to get Alex to believe in him. But that faith had come too late. He took another drag of his mashed-up cigarette, and then ashed it on Morrison's tower. In the box that had been left for he and Layla, the old man had put a recording. Alex had stowed it in the pocket of his combat jacket. He knew now was as good a time as any to play it back, even if he wasn't sure he wanted to hear what Jack had put in this likely suicide note. As he drew lines across the map, he pressed the play switch, then tossed the recorder on the table. "Alex? Shit, I fucking hate these things. Alex, I hope the gifts I left make your life a hell of a lot easier. What you said back on the flight to Jerusalem made me start thinking. I needed to clear my head and understand the full effects of this war, and what it has done to my life. I was ready to let Nyala die, just so we could all come home without worrying about another scar, another death. That small choice of leaving someone to die when you know you could save them, that is what started this movement to begin with. That choice made me think of all the other small choices I've made these last 10 years. It made me remember how much I sacrificed in the name of the mission, in the name of killing a man I had failed to harm on my own account. The people who you met that were once my friends are the embodiment of every small mistake I'd ever made. I am fortunate they're not dead like Eric or Sifix. I wasn't ready for this changed world, Alex. I can see that now. How can a man lead when all he has is experience against weaker enemies? That made me arrogant. It made me believe John Morrison was nothing more than a usurper with a silver spoon up his ass. I was wrong. Through it all, you saw my mistakes and the scars on the faces of my old team, and found a way to trust me, even if it meant going against your lover, against your best friend, and against Eric's daughter, who never had a reason to trust in me in the first place. They were all right to not trust me. I've made so many people I've called allies and friends suffer over the years. It's about time that I suffer for them. Good luck, Alex. The tape clicked to a stop. Alex thought about the old man's words as he continued drawing lines of attack through the streets of New Purgatory. He knew the old man must have an endgame, but he couldn't be sure what it was. Or maybe it was as he said. It was just his time to suffer. Alex couldn't let it bother him for too long. For all he knew, Jack Newsom was already dead, and Alex knew the old man would have already moved on. This was the time to plan. There were several major centers he wanted to hit before the main attack. He had a feeling it would put Morrison on guard, but if the holdings weren't hit, there'd be a greater chance of those resources being used against his team in the last battle. I'll take a straight-up fight any day, Janet said, holding up 2 cups of coffee. She set one atop the airstrip in Central Park. Alex gave her a nod. Not even a good morning? She continued sarcastically. You must be angrier than I thought. Did you come down here to help or talk? Alex asked, still focused on the lines. Both. Janet's voice always implored authority. I figured we could talk first, so you can hear what I have to say so I don't have to cut you down this early in the morning. You'd cut me down anyway. I'm a mere your call sign after all, Alex said with a smile. Oh, fuck you. She took a gulp from her mug. Treating you like shit isn't my intention. It just comes out. Usually when you do stupid shit. Right, Alex replied, grabbing for his mug. I might not make popular decisions, but if they get us what we want... Careful with how you finish that sentence, Janet cut him off. Other people have claimed the same and turned into those they overthrow. At least tell me I know the difference between tyranny and what's necessary. Jack did too, but lost sight of it after his first failure. Losses are rarely acceptable, but always inevitable, Alex replied. Good that you have that in your head, but Jack... Janet trailed. Made up for his mistakes and then some. It was Alex's turn to cut her off. We'd have been dead if he didn't get Vito's team to show themselves. Maybe, Janet replied. Alex shook his head and decided to refocus on the map. I want to hit the airstrip, his fueling center, and main armory. With those 3 taken out, he's going to have trouble recalling and arming his reinforcements that are deeper in the city, or outside of it. That gives us a chance to stock up on ammunition and explosives too, Janet replied. What about his communication hubs? He doesn't want those taken down for damn good reasons, Otto said as he entered the main room with Mikhail, Tyler, and Layla in tow. He wants the whole damn world to know what it is we've done, the convict continued, placing both palms down on the table. Makes for one hell of a show for the other nations. Might also make it damn near impossible for any of us to ever leave this city again with Morrison dead or alive. We should focus on getting in before worrying about escape, Tyler replied. And how we're going to slag that tower. I was hoping you'd have some ideas there, Ty, Alex responded, bringing the mug back to his lips. I can't see a safe way of getting that much firepower in there while we assault his base. But one could slip in unnoticed and plant what we need on the main supports, Tyler explained. That's all it would take? Layla asked incredulously. There's no way you can bring down a building of that size with handheld explosives. That's true, but what he left for me is stronger than the average explosive. In fact, it's strong enough to blow a nuclear battery, like the one that's under the tower that's powered by the nearby Cloudbreaker generator. How the hell do you know that? Otto asked. Jack left me a blueprint. If we can get some of the explosives to weaken the building's supports, then on the battery, and a conduit that runs into the main building, then the mini nuclear explosion will finish what the bombs on the supports can't. Tyler finished. What do you think, Mikhail? Alex asked. Infiltration is possible. I must query why we would assault a place we can simply destroy remotely? The Shadow asked. The team turned their gaze towards Alex. Look, if we blow the tower, then someone else would just take Morrison's place. The throne might be gone, but the war machine would remain. That's why we're hitting his other holdings. This is as much about poisoning his empire as it is killing the man. We know he's going to hold up in the tower once he gets wind of what we're planning. He's going to send everyone he has that isn't already in the building to climb up after us. They're going to try to trap us in that tower. If we get them all in that tower when it goes, there'll be nothing left for another leader to take. We need to send a message to anyone who would try to emulate Morrison. I want the soldiers to fear the Crusaders, to fear our call signs, to fear our names, either from the soldiers that escape or on the radio traffic during the chaos. I want our names to be legend. A warning to anyone who tries to step on the people of New Purgatory again. Alex took a deep breath after finishing his speech. When he looked up, he saw the rest of the team was gathered at the table. They all looked proud, strong, and accepting of the fate Alex had condemned them to. It is a reasonable argument for an impossible siege, Mikhail finally said. I do have a suggestion, however, for weakening Morrison's holdings. Yeah? Alex asked. I believe several of us are better at moving in the night and striking patrols. I, Talia, and Brandon can move quickly enough alone at a location before reinforcements arrive, the Shadow explained. No good, Otto replied. Eventually he'd start rolling out armor with his men. Mikhail showed a faint smile. This is the point, you see. Soldiers will be diverted to our location for a threat they cannot find. This will slow down the response times to other incidents Alexander has planned. It also lowers their fuel supplies, Layla added, and they're going to be hurting after we hit their main station. It's going to put a lot of heat on us, Tommy said. I mean, we won't be able to just ferry across town. There'll be checkpoints and roadblocks all over Manhattan. They'll be watching for the bird, too. I'm inclined to agree, Dellen added. Jack might not give anything up, but Morrison would be stupid to not follow the old man's paper trail after he retired. And that leads back here, Naola finished. That's a risk we're going to have to take, Alex acknowledged. If we sit and wait, then it's like Dellen says. He'll eventually throw everything at us. If we go on the offensive, it's going to scatter his forces. Even if he does find out we're here, Morrison would have to think twice about committing all his forces. He still needs troops protecting his tower. We're already behind then, Brandon added. We should start hitting patrols today, preferably away from targets you want to hit, so he has more ground to cover. I vote the airstrip, Janet proposed. The others were nodding their heads in agreement, but Alex sat back and crossed his arms. We're going to handle the two places at once. He watched as every set of eyes fell on him. We'll take down patrols around the airstrip and armory. When he begins to divert men, we'll strike the fueling station. It'll be a quick attack. We take out as many Marines as we can and then retreat. After several moments of dead silence, the Shadow decided to speak again. Where shall we begin the assault? Alex took a pen and drew a large X a few blocks away from the Central Park airstrip. Mikhail, Talia, and Brandon will cause havoc here. Alex drew another X a few blocks down from the old 69th Armory building that Morrison had repurposed. I'll take a team to handle the patrols and armaments down there. Janet, Otto, and Layla are in. Tommy, I need you to figure out a way to get the vehicles through the roadblocks Morrison will be setting up. Tyler, I need you to rig explosives powerful enough to blast the tower, but small enough for Mikhail to carry unburdened. I believe I should join you, Ezra stated. Me too, Nayala added. Alex was hesitant about letting Nayala back on her feet so soon after her torture at the hands of Shea Vito. He decided against his better judgment. Go with Mikhail's team. He then thought about Ezra for a moment. You can join us, Bounty Hunter. Meet back here by 11 this morning, with how well each of you did. If it all goes bad, then get on the comm. Alex turned away from the table and went for a rifle in one of the weapons lockers, while everyone else began their preparations. His dream was finally a reality. Today, they went to war. Tommy drove Talia, Brandon, Nayala, and Mikhail towards the western end of Central Park, all the while finding the darkness cast by the buildings reinforced with solar panels less eerie than he had before he left with Alex. Compared to the disasters of London and China, this place, blackened and twisted as it was home. Do you remember why you chose to fight in war? Talia asked Mikhail. He had his eyes closed and was playing back classical music in his head. Talia's words were sprawled out for him by the database. He ended the music program and opened his eyes. I do not, he replied. Though my personal files listed me as any other ordinary of-age male looking to join the Russian military. I was brought in during or before we invaded Chechnya, and my abilities during the First War placed me in the Spetsnaz. I always wondered why people in countries that claimed they wanted peace were always involved in war, Talia commented. You never wanted peace? Tommy asked. I was never given the choice, Talia responded. In that, we may have something in common, Mikhail said, staring down at his blade. The gleam of his eyes reflected off the shine. What about you two? Tommy asked, directing his question towards Nayala and Brandon. Oh, my family was military, Nayala answered. They wanted me to choose a different career, so I joined the Royal Military College to become an officer and a spy. The Rangers picked me up because they needed people who could adapt to what the world had become. What about you, Brandon? Tommy pressed. Nothing as glorious or ill-fated. Not until late in my career, at least. I grew up in the hills around Calgary with my dad. Did a lot of hunting, and I never went to school. I learned how to sight down a scope before division. All the basics came together for me when I was finally exposed to it. The record states you were transferred to a unit in the United States military, Mikhail commented. Yeah, Red. My own country put me out on loan during the Freedom Wars. That's how I ended up with Jack's team, after the bombs came down. I didn't have a reason to go home. Everyone had to be dead. You didn't want to see if your dad was alive? Talia asked. He died of pancreatic cancer before I got loaned out. Doctors caught it way too late. I'm sorry, Talia said. Don't be. He'd have hated to see the world like this anyway. We're approaching the drop spot, kids. I'm going to find a place to lay low. Get on the comm when you're ready to go. 3.5 miles away, Alex and his team were watching for a passing patrol in one of the shelled apartment blocks. When they entered, Alex could tell it was one that hadn't been damaged by the quakes. He could smell the interior or look at all the holes in the walls to know what caused this building's destruction. Blood boil. Morrison had done fuck all to fix the mess. Alex sometimes thought the man left places like these, ones he could easily rebuild and put in his empire, as a message to its citizens, that there was no place he would not destroy for order. Ezra leaned in near Alex. What's the plan here, American? Easy enough. Let them come by, then blast them. They'll be exposed in the street. They try to chase us, we'll fall back. It won't be that simple, Ezra replied. It never is, Layla replied. Eyes up. The squad of 20 soldiers slowly lumbered down the main street. Even from this distance, Ezra could see they were dragging their feet. They've been at this for a few hours, Otto said. They're either tired or they feel safe. The convict fed an ammo belt into his minigun. We should take the ends. Let Uncle Otto do the heavy lifting, Janet advised. Good idea. Let them center up, then take your shot, Alex concurred. Otto set his large gun on one of the shattered windowsills, then let it warm up. Janet was sighting down her scope, when the wild hail of bullets began crashing into Marine bodies. Then more flew as she sighted down the skulls of the remnants that returned fire. 10 left, Otto shouted as he pulled his gun down from the window to refeed it. Alex could see the soldiers were starting to rush the building for cover. Fall back, he yelled, vaulting over a desk, then turning back to shoot. Everyone except Ezra retreated deeper into the building. What are you doing? Alex yelled out. The bounty hunter ignored him and unslung his scatter pistols. Ezra turned the corner from the wall cover and unloaded into the Marines one blast at a time. They seemed so taken aback by Ezra's aggression that they had little time to react. The scatter pistols fired blasts like a compact shotgun, 8 rounds at a time. It tore through every Mark's armor and sprayed blood across the dusty gray walls. The rest of the team covered Ezra as the other Marines either ran or stood to engage. They never stood a chance. Those that tried to get away were sighted down by the clearing power of Otto's minigun. Ezra opened the ammo slider on his weapons and ejected 2 large cylinders. They smacked the ground hot, burning into what remained of the building's carpet. Alex slung his rifle over his back and moved over to the bounty hunter. What the hell was that about? Running through an unstable building isn't the way I want to die, Mr. Velasco. Besides, they never saw me behind that wall, Ezra replied. Alex gave him a disapproving look. It's your life. Just don't do something to risk ours. I'll keep that in mind. The tension between the two men was obvious to all around, but was cut short by the screeching halt of a transport truck. Reinforcements! Janet yelled out. Brandon found himself a nice bird's nest on the 3rd floor of a Morrison hotel. The ground levels never had guards. There was no point in putting them where they weren't needed, or where they could get killed easily. The sniper went through the plan in his head again. Mikhail would scout out the group they sought to ambush, then slowly pick them off. Once they were in Brandon's clear view, he'd pick off as many as he could to force them into cover. Then Nyala and Talia would clean up the rest when they emerged behind them. Quick, clean, and surgical, he said to himself, scoping down the cracked roads. I have visual, Mikhail's voice came through the comm. They seem wary. The other attack must have made it over the radio. Mikhail watched from behind the carcass of an overturned dump truck as Maury's Marines moved huddled together in the shadow of the skyscrapers. Mikhail knew it would be difficult to take one at a time when they were in such a tight formation. Give them a distraction. That pulled his head back to the dream of Chechnya, the team he lost, and the names and faces he could no longer recall. Siren, Faith, enter the building at the end of the block and wait near the main entrance, Mikhail ordered. Already switching the plan? Nyala asked. There is no choice. Get their attention as they pass. There was a single click in response. Mikhail found leading a group was beyond his expertise, but knew Alex had placed him in this position for a reason. The moment they turn, you must lay fire into them, Fox. I will assist. Mikhail unscrewed the silencer on the old man's final gift. He shifted his vision to see beyond the vehicle. There were 2 bodies, their backs to the wall. The shadow heard the familiar pop of a stinger grenade. For a moment, he saw the spread of small, hot pieces of ball-bearing shrapnel glow across his vision. Then several bodies fell to the ground. The thundering sound of Brandon's rifle came next, and that's when the shadow turned and fired into the crowd. The soldiers were caught off guard by the weapons fire coming in so many different directions. Those that tried to focus on the shadow were cut down by Nyala and Talia. Mikhail put down those that aimed towards the building, and Brandon killed anyone stupid enough to stand out in the open. When the attack was finally over, the shadow saw that he had been hit. A single bullet crushed by the design of his suit. He flicked it off to the ground. Clear, Mikhail said into the comm. Not quite, Brandon replied. We've got a few jeeps moving in. Get to cover. I'll try to slow them down. Bullets slammed through the glass, raining down shards on Alex's head. Want to try storming them now? He yelled through the crash of more bullets. Ezra was too focused on reloading his weapon and keeping his head down to respond. Ideas? Alex yelled. Janet was at his side with a stinger grenade. Just one, she cried, lobbing it towards the undercarriage of the troop carrier. The explosion that followed sent the truck on its side and nearby troops reeling. Several rushed the window, but ran into Otto, who pulled them from over the makeshift cover and beat them to death over glass shards. Layla was covering for the convict, and Janet tried to mop up the remaining soldiers running away.
"They're going to swarm us if we don't get out of here soon,"
Layla yelled, clipping another Marine.
"We've got another truck,"
Janet called out. Alex was beginning to realize how alert Morrison had been making his soldiers. If a strike this small was stirring up so much attention, then an attack on one of his major stations would be a killing ground. "Fall back into the alleys and make for the vehicles. Exile on me." Otto and Ezra were the first out the back door, followed by Janet. Alex and Layla took a slower pace and let the Marines crawl through the glass and broken steel of the front of the building. Alex took pot shots at each of the Marines, while Layla suppressed the entrances. "Great start," Alex yelled, catching a Marine in the helmet.
"I'm running dry here,"
Layla called back, loading a last clip into her SMG. "Fuck," Alex swore under his breath, realizing he too was out of ammo. "Go on, I'm right behind you." Layla put her back against the wall she used as cover and stared hard at him. "Don't get lost playing hero," she yelled, pushing off the wall and sprinting for the exit. Alex propped his rifle back up and laid down his last few shots, and then broke out for the back alley. His team was waiting at the far end of one of Tommy's modified BMWs. He jumped in and moved Ezra aside. "I'm driving. If you don't like it, walk home." He slammed his foot on the gas. "The other team?" "Nothing yet," Otto said.
"Probably doing as well as us,"
Janet added. Brandon quickly slammed another clip into his rifle as he sighted down the driver of the foremost jeep. He took a short breath and exhaled, pulling the trigger swiftly, then aiming towards the next jeep without so much of a glance at his old target. The screeching wheels and sound of metal twisting on itself was all the confirmation he needed. The sniper pulled his trigger again, this time aiming for the turning tire that attempted to avoid the fresh wreck. The vehicle lost its control and spun sideways into the sheared hulk, and the Marines tried to escape from it. Brandon saw Talia rushing for the wreck, sword raised. The surviving Marines didn't move. The sniper could see the fear in their faces as she closed in. Those that did lift their weapons were brought down by Mikhail. Brandon was mesmerized by the old Russian's aim, the way his arm moved from target to target without moving his head. He saw Talia throw a hard knee into a Marine's chest, then spun her body hard, cutting across another soldier. She turned back to finish off the one she had wounded, but Neala was already there, driving a boot down on the man's head. "Fox," it was Alex's voice, calling through the comm, the sound of gunfire echoing behind his voice. "How is it?" "Maury sent reinforcements. Nothing we can't handle," Brandon replied. "You?" "We're all right, but the armory is well patrolled. We got a jeep on our ass." The sniper watched as a third jeep pulled up just a few meters short of the wreck. Neala and Mikhail were already firing into it as the soldiers fell out of their doorways. "We know the feeling. Are you headed back?" Brandon asked. "Yeah. Clean up what's left and get back. We're going to need a new plan," Alex replied. Brandon pulled his trigger again, catching the gas tank of the last jeep, setting it ablaze. "Copy that, Sentinel." Brandon slung his rifle across his back. "Rest of you get all that?" Talia pulled her blade out of the husk of a soldier she had just felled and set it back in its scabbard. She saw Neala walking by each of the twitching bodies and put a bullet into each of their heads.
"Yes, Fox, we're ready to make our exit."
Talia cupped her ear.
"Grease."
"Coming around the corner, kids. Save any for me?" Tommy asked. A bullet rang out loud over the comm. Neala put it into a Marine attempting to crawl away. "No," she said, finally letting her arm rest the heavy pistol at her side. "Right," Tommy replied. "I'll be right there." Mikhail sat near the fire of the twisting jeep Brandon had dead-eyed, letting the fire warm him. Talia strode near him and crouched at his side.
"These men have more bite than the child soldiers back home," she said.
The shadow was screwing his silencer back onto his pistol, but offered no reply.
"Even out of the shadows, you're still in your element," she continued.
Mikhail placed the gun in his chest holster. That was more than an infiltrator once, though it was different than crawling through air ducts or creeping through basements.
I find it a shame your old life is nothing but words on a page. They traded your life for your talents,
Talia replied. They traded more than my life. Mikhail looked at Brandon, climbing down the fire escape, making his way towards Nyala. It's one way to make sure they don't get back up, Brandon said as he took a seat on the nearby sidewalk. You alright?
I'm going to kill every one of these motherfuckers,
Nyala replied, not giving the sniper as much as a glance.
You know that won't bring him back, the sniper started. It's not about that, Brandon. This is payback. The sad truth is that it's all he ever wanted, and now he's made the rest of us buy in.
Yeah, sounds like him. Manipulative as that might be. Still, he saved your life, the sniper replied.
He could have found another way.
She turned her head towards him, eyebrows bent at him. The sniper looked down at his boots, defeated, but managed to smirk. Yeah. Well, we could say that a lot for what he did, couldn't we? Brandon replied. He noticed that short, streaky tears were coming down her cheeks. He made his way over and embraced her, though she didn't return it. Her body felt like dead weight in his arms. I respected that man for 10 years before I found out what he was really about, Brandon whispered in her ear. After what he did to you, what he did to us, I wouldn't shed a goddamn tear for him. Not one. The screech of tires from Tommy's car halted the conversations. Jesus fucking H. There's got to be at least 30 bodies out here, Tommy called out. 43, Mikhail replied, moving to the front passenger seat. Let us leave. Alex let his team head back to their rooms to rest early, but he waited in the rear garage for Mikhail's. When they finally arrived, he noticed the difference in his team and the shadows. Mikhail came over to Alex without having to signal him, while the others made for their room upstairs. Go well for you? Alex asked, sitting on the hood of the BMW. Mikhail examined some of the bullet damage on the vehicle. Indeed, though our team had experience on our side, the Shadow replied. Yeah, we weren't expecting the resistance we got. Yours looked like they were ready for more, Alex replied. Brandon's skill made it easy on us as well. I would recommend diversifying one team for our strikes. The others will have preparations they can make here. One job in and I'm already fucking up, Alex groaned. No one was lost, Alexander, and our strikes were effective. Morrison will increase his patrols in the areas we planned, Mikhail explained. I'm just getting the feeling that we're not ready for this kind of fire, Alex said. Giving up is not a hallmark of anyone on this team. You now have more knowledge of how to use each of us effectively. Perhaps you should take a moment to think on that. Yeah, Alex replied. He pushed off the car and moved towards the stairs, doubt still filling his mind. Alexander, Mikhail called out. Alex forced himself to stop and turn around. We will only succeed if you believe we will succeed. That was Jack Newsom's failing. Alex thought about that before responding. Let's go get a drink. Acknowledged.